things that were not required. And it kind of put a bad taste in their mouth because they said, well, I thought it was required. No, it's so helpful to talk to someone when you're going to do an ADA plan to make sure that not only do you stay in compliance, of course, but you use what you have within your means. And so that you can make it as accessible as possible. So with that, the Department of Justice, along with the IRS, has established a tax incentive package. I've provided the link to you again through the ADA, to the DOJ business portal, and it can be used for the following things. And as I mentioned, removing physical barriers, things like, steps and doing ramps in bathrooms, vehicles, even effective communication, including interpreters, accessible websites, alternative formats, and purchase of accessible equipment and consultation situationally. And I want to mention specifically because when it comes to creating an accessible website or creating one from the ground up or even retro, that if you're going to use these tax incentives to offset that cost, just know that I would give a call to the Department of Justice. I've put the phone number down there. Talk to them about it. They won't necessarily help you do the paperwork, but you can talk to them. You can certainly give us a call. And I'm going to give you a couple of other numbers for small businesses that you can start to think about. How can I start to include ADA in my business plan? How can I make it universally accessible? And how can I leverage some of these tax incentives? I believe that 90+% of the businesses in the Virgin Islands are small businesses. So pretty much anybody, almost everybody is going to qualify for this tax incentive opportunity. So I want to definitely make sure. And actually on that note, I have a question for the audience. Has anybody ever used an ADA incentive? So Mary Jo, just see if you see any raise of hands.
Raise of hands.
Using the ADA incentive that I just mentioned.
I don't see any raised hands.
Okay. The difficulty I know with small businesses is that, you have limited resources. We're not even talking about during the pandemic. This is in general that there's limited resources, there's limited staff or personnel, and there's also limited departments. Like maybe a small business is really not going to have a whole financial department or an accounting department where they can go ahead and process the whole tax incentive paperwork. So it is a bit cumbersome, but it is something in the long run that's worth it. And there's some people who can help you kind of muddle through it, but do know that that's something that we've seen in the disability community that's been a barrier because sometimes small businesses just don't have that resource to go ahead and process that paperwork. But don't let that stop you. Let us know. You certainly give me a call. I'd be happy to get you to the places that can help you. And again, at the end, I'm going to give you a couple of resources with that. So Mary Jo, I don't believe, did anybody raise their hand yet about using the tax incentive?
No raised hands.
Okay. All right. So at this point, I'm going to stop my PowerPoint and I'm going to hand it over to Adam to pick up not only, the good business sense, but now the good practices of becoming accessible. So let me end my show and stop the share, and then I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, now let me share mine real quick. Let's see here. That one. Yes. Okay. And I'm on the wrong slide. Let's get back to the beginning. Okay. So the as I mentioned, I initially got into accessibility work through working with search engines. So specifically search marketing, search engine optimization is the process of.
Excuse me, Adam.
Yes.
I don't see your slide. Can you be sure?
Oh, okay.
Click
Well,
on share.
let's see. It says I'm sharing. Anybody else? Let's see here. Can anybody else see that?
Yes, it's fine.
Okay.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, so search engine optimization is setting up websites to get free organic traffic from search engines. And pay-per-click advertising is like the ads that show up at the top of Google. Those are both loosely lumped under the category of search engine marketing, or sorry, search marketing. So search engine bots, they're a little more sophisticated now. Google's gotten a little better at the way it can process images and kind of understand that an image of a dog is an image of a dog. But that's very recent. That's in maybe the last 5 years. Previous to that, search engines, and still largely, search engines are essentially blind users. They just, they don't know what that picture is of unless there is some clue that tells them what that picture is of. And I can tell you that the vast majority of websites are inaccessible. Specifically, that mostly applies to blind users. So blind users who can't use a mouse because they can't see where they're clicking. They have to navigate completely via their keyboard. So oftentimes like to go through, for instance, if you filled out a form and you put in your username and then you hit tab and you go down to the next field so you can enter your password. That's because hitting tab takes you to the next focusable element, as they call it. So that could be part of a form, it could be a part of a link, it could be a button that you need to submit. It's basically anything that you would kind of interact with. So a lot of the things that deal with inaccessible websites relate to users that are using screen readers that have visual impairment that are trying to use your website, and are they able to? With universal design, I mean, there's a little more to it than that. So for instance, by the time people hit 50, about half of them have, essentially they need reading glasses. They have some level of visual impairment. So even shy of being blind, I mean, you could be colorblind, you could just need bigger text, you could, have a neurological disorder where you have very specific colors that bother you that you need to be able to mute, things like that. So, if you think about just the difference in, like closed captions on TV. So closed captions work okay if you're deaf because you can read the captions and see what's going on. But if you're blind, for video and TV and stuff like that, you actually need not just captions, but a description so you can understand what is happening. So while a lot of web accessibility issues relate to being blind, because there is a lot of case law about it, you also certainly wouldn't want to have a strobe on your website that gave people with photosensitive seizures a seizure. And frankly, a lot of the principles of accessible design are just, giving multiple ways to navigate, understanding that not all users use websites in the same way. So let's see. So this is Big Lots. Big Lots is Columbus, Ohio, which is where I'm from, is a Columbus, Ohio based retailer. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of them, but this is what a page for their home furnishing, home accents, that is, on their website looks like. So this is kind of what a normal user sees. You see images, you see, coloring, styles, buttons, pop-ups, forms, links. I'm familiar enough with the layout. I know exactly what I need to do on this site. However, a search engine or a blind user sees this. So when I disable the styles and it just shows everything in a linear fashion, this is what the navigation looks like. Skipping ahead real quick, these are, for instance, the filters where you're choosing the colors and the sizes is the bigger image. And then this example is also not styled, but I did still allow it to load images. Technically, for a person that's blind, they wouldn't even see the images. So if the images don't have what's called alt text, then there's really no way of knowing what that image is about. So this is basically how a search engine or a blind user would perceive a site. And for instance, the forms on this page, part of the reason I included that is because forms are one of the most problematic things for disabled people trying to use your site, via navigating through a screen reader, keyboards. There are now eye tracking scripts that will help people navigate who are like quadriplegic. They can just follow their eyes and that'll help them navigate the site. So there's a lot of different ways people use it. And yeah, the forms are one thing to really watch out for. A lot of the links, a lot of things like that will give it problems. Let me see here. I know I got notes. Let me check this. Okay, so getting to that, part of the benefit of improving the accessibility of your website is because you're improving it for blind users, which includes search engines. and for all users in general, but it will actually improve the traffic, the free traffic that you get organically from search engines. Specifically, Google includes it as one of their ranking factors in how they rank a website. So not only will they be able, the process where a search engine tries to understand your site is called indexing. And then separately, they rank it, which is where they put you on the page. Accessibility helps with both. So yeah, it gets you a broader audience, and it will help just get you more traffic and make it so that anyone can use it simply. Let's see here. Okay, so for some examples, this is a free, it's called a bookmarklet that was built by the Social Security Administration. It's called Andy. And you go and you kind of grab the little button there and you drag it up to your bookmarks bar. And then the thing below where it shows the meet, or under where it says Meet Andy, that's showing a display of the interface of what it looks like. So let me show you what that is. So if I take that same site that I was just on and I open it in the Andy bookmarklet, which I just click in my browser bar and it pops up at the top of the page there, I can click through the buttons and it will give me, for instance, on this, I'm looking at links and buttons. It shows me, how it would be read to a screen reader. So it would say shop departments, and you can see it has a little warning that that's ambiguous because there are multiple links with the same description, but a different link that it points to on the page. So that's how is a blind person supposed to know which one they're going to if they're labeled all identically? And you can even see on the side, you can view the links found, the entire list. There's 108 of them on this page. There are 7 elements with no accessible name and 4 link alerts. And as you kind of scroll through the different options on here, they have one that is, as I said, the focusable elements like the forms and the links are hard. So that's kind of the initial Andy, so to speak. And then it has the sub modules, they call them, where you can look at graphics and images, you can look at links and buttons, you can look at tables, you can look at structures, you can look at color contrast issues, hidden content, and iframes. So there are standards for all of those for what we know makes it easy for someone to use a site. Some of them, for instance, structures mostly deals with headings, and like if you have a footer, is it labeled as a footer? If you have, do you have a headline 1 followed by a headline 2 followed by a headline 3? Tables are more a thing where early on in the days of the web, they were used for layout, whereas that's really confusing to someone who can't see it because they have no idea what the layout is and it's being presented like it's a table of data. Links and buttons is kind of the one we're looking at there. Graphics and images will tell you if you have alt text that's missing or anything like that that needs fixed. And so it's just a quick way. It only does 1 page at a time, but it's a free tool that is really handy. If you can see the little drop down where it points an arrow, I didn't add that on. That's built into the tool. So it adds a little pink line and highlights the thing that it's talking about at that moment. So it makes it really easy to identify the elements you're looking at. And it's pretty extensive. It goes through a wide range of things that can be problematic. So let's see here. Speaking of which, while I was generating this, I ran into a real world accessibility problem. So in trying to put this together, suddenly this pop-up window popped up. Well, if you notice at the top there, the focus, as it's called, which is where if I were pressing tab and going through this page, and actually you can even see it in the search field that the cursor's there. But so it's looking at a input type text, it's a search, it's a controls element. Basically it was prepared for me to start typing in something and hit enter to search the site. And this window popped up that took over the focus, which if I were blind, I would have absolutely no way of knowing what had happened. I just wouldn't be able to use the site. I'd just have to give up. I just have to close it and go on my way. So yeah, focus and the usage are some of the biggest issues in web accessibility. Let's see here. So for more examples, the UK government has an accessibility office, and they intentionally built the world's least accessible web page. And if you search exactly that, you'll find it. It's this link if you're not sure. But a couple highlights from there is, we deliberately introduced 142 accessibility barriers to a page's content and ran them through 13 automated tools. The best performing tool in this category only picked up about 50% of our deliberate mistakes. So that is exactly why you need to have actual users test your site and to listen to feedback and to be open to them. There is some discussion in, yeah, I sure can. There is some discussion in the, oh, maybe I'm gonna have to wait. Let's see if it'll let me. Oh, come on. Okay, I will add it in a second. There we go. Okay. I don't know if any of you guys saw this, but there was a 60 minutes in 2016, I think. It was about kind of the scourge of ADA lawsuits, and they called them drive-by lawsuits or Google lawsuits. And the premise of this story was pretty disparaging to people with disabilities. It basically went into, it said that what was happening is that there were people and lawyers that would get on Google Maps and look for hotels that didn't have a crane to put someone in a wheelchair into the pool. And then they would sue them for that. And they called these drive-by lawsuits or Google Maps lawsuits. And what they described was some pretty egregious behavior. But to act like anyone that's disabled and that raises a usability issue with, business services you're trying to provide is a pretty cynical outlook. I mean, they didn't really have much of the other side in that story. So the fact of the matter is that most people who want to take advantage of your services, if they say, oh, I can't get up the ramp, or this wheelchair, the parking space isn't wide enough, or I can't submit a form on your website, or any of that, they just want to be able to take advantage of the same services that everyone else can. And the chance that someone just mentions it to you and says, hey, I wish you could fix this, is much higher than the chance that you end up in court. Well, but the way to avoid ending up in court is that when someone asks you something along those lines, kind of give it the benefit of the doubt. They're hoping to engage with your services, and they're giving you some positive feedback. Maybe it's something that of course it'll involve some work probably, but I think it's good to be open-minded. Sometimes when you're busy, I know when I am, sometimes when I'm busy, something that kind of catches me out of blue that sounds like more work doesn't sound like very appealing to me. But to change that mindset and realize, that this isn't a quality thing is really important. Okay, so let's see here. So on this, on the UK site, you can go and they have not only the web page itself, but they have all the tools they tested that are just automated tools. And they have different ratings and rankings, and they have a pretty detailed explanation of why these are problematic and who they're problematic for. And that entire UK government accessibility thing, they have lots of actually really good content if you're interested in learning about this. I've learned a lot from reading them, and some of them are just posters that talk about how different people with different disabilities need the differences they need and why they need them. So I really recommend this quite highly. So one of the things, my background is actually originally was in design. And one of the problems I've had in a lot of places that are design focused is they view digital media like it is a magazine, like it's a fixed layout, that you're going to look at it one page to another, and that the layout is never going to change and never going to move. And, the text is going to be this size and the picture is going to be this size and everything is going to be fixed. And that is, it works from a design standpoint of, does this look good? You can have someone that knows design and knows how to make it look good, make sure it's right. But that really defeats the strength of digital media. So digital media, you can let people change the size of the text. You can let them change the color scheme. A lot more sites and services are now doing, like, would you like to choose between a light color scheme and a dark color scheme? But by the same token, you can have people that can select high contrast if they have, if they need that. Along those same lines, translations are part of it, because, well, they're not necessarily considered an accessibility issue under the laws we're talking about. It makes your site available to more people, and to understand that people are going to come in and land on, not come on the homepage, not just land on the homepage and go where they go, but they're going to come into all different types of pages on your site from a lot of different sources, and that some of them may need it translated, or they may need it in bigger text, or they may need something changed. Speaking back to the pop-ups, so I actually, I don't know, I always feel funny saying this. I'm actually disabled, so I have ADHD. For me, if a website has too many things moving, if it has autoplay videos and it has sounds binging off all the time and a notification pops up and then there's a scrolling banner across the bottom, I can't use that website. I have a huge number of ad blockers and pop-ups and customizations to my browser and lots of different settings that I use to make browsing the web something that doesn't just drive me batty, right? So that is a hard one to quantify, as in, people have a lot of different needs, so you can't necessarily predict them all, but you can kind of know the more common ones and address those, and that's what the user groups and the automated tools do. So as I said, I use the automated tools. They're really useful to learn. I definitely would not rely on them, because again, even the best only find about half of the problematic things. And yeah, I guess I view it really very much like a thing of do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If I was blind, if I was sensitive to, photosensitive seizures, any of those things, I'd still like to be able to use websites. I'd still like to be able to go places and do things and not be excluded just because I was disabled. And in that sense, but yeah, so a lot of this is kind of do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. So the content management system that I usually use is to build websites. It's called WordPress. WordPress, when you go look through their themes, which are templates you can use for your site, they have a category that they call accessible ready. And I actually really think that's a good way to put it, because if you have not, a website that has not taken the steps to try to fix all these things, I can guarantee you will not pass. It will have lots of problems. Probably 99% of sites on the web do not pass accessibility tests. And so what accessible ready indicates is that it doesn't just come out that way, that yes, all the basics are there, all the fundamentals are there, but if you upload images and you don't add alt text, you're still going to have an inaccessible site. So by looking at that and understanding that yes, there is some legwork involved, but that you can also, specifically when you're looking for a website or looking for a vendor, you can ask, hey, is this accessible? Is this going to pass the ADA? Will this meet section 508? You can screen for that and you can find for that. And as the awareness of this grows, it's getting easier and easier to find. I was setting up a e-commerce site for myself the other day, and I went to the wordpress.org website and I browsed their free themes and looked for accessible ready ones that supported e-commerce, and found one. I'm in the process of building one myself. So it's nice to know that is an easy option that you can now find, but none of it's automatic. You're still, you still have to be deliberate when you name things and how you set things up, and have a little bit of, even if not necessarily insight at first, at least go check it and see if it's working and see if it doesn't. So I think that's about it. I guess I think we're maybe to questions. Let's see.
Okay,
Yep, okay.
if anybody have any questions, you can raise your hand and we'll take those on. We'll allow you to say it as opposed to type it in the chat.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's kind of hard.
And Mary Jo, if I can maybe just put up the last couple of screens as we close out as well, if that's okay?
Sure, sure. And I'll go ahead and put there's an evaluation. You can talk about that.
Sure. So can people see my screen that says Northeast ADA Center?
Raise your hand, say yes.
Yes. you can.
Okay, great, great. So I just want to briefly go over in terms of who we are and who we're affiliated with, because the Disability Rights Center of the Virgin Islands is a territory-wide organization, and we are an affiliate of the Northeast ADA Center at Cornell University. They have a toll-free number, 800-949-4232, and their email, northeastada@cornell.edu. I want to mention them specifically because as I was talking to Adam about this training, the Northeast ADA Center back in early 2000s actually had a whole accessible information technology initiative. And so I was lucky to be part of that. And I can tell you they've got great information. They do a lot on ADA, but talk to them also about any kind of information related to the web. You can talk to them to get technical assistance, receive materials and information referrals as well. So I just want to make sure I mention the Northeast ADA. They're a great support to us, certainly with the Disability Rights Center. Just so you know, Disability Rights Center, our website's drcvi.org. You can email us at info@drcvi.org. In St. Thomas, 340-772-1200. That includes the District of St. John. And I'm sorry, St. John, including the District of St. John, 340-776-4303. Do know that we are here for you guys as small business. We want to respond to your needs. That's why we brought in experts like Adam to make sure that we bring that expertise to you. And we work in conjunction certainly with Mary Jo with the SBDC as well as Sharika. And anytime that we can bring a new training that is cutting edge, but also responds to the needs of what you're looking for. So I just wanted to make that quick little plug at the end. We'll certainly have time for some questions. And Mary Jo, whenever you like to drop in the evaluation, we appreciate any feedback. It helps us to do more programming. It helps us to support our funders, or support our funders support us, and also to be able to provide new programming that you may suggest. So if you wouldn't mind filling that out, it's a quick questionnaire. And Mary Jo, I'm going to pass it back to you for questions and answers.
Okay. So I put the evaluation in. It's right. It's the https://Cornell. So that's the evaluation. If you guys could fill that out, that would be great. And we have any questions? Oh, I have a hand, Miss Kamisha Michaels. You can go ahead, please. You can unmute your mic. Okay, well, let's
I'm
see.
wondering if that was the same hand from earlier about the website.
Well, I took that
Okay.
one down.
Maybe she really,
No.
really has a question.
I do, yes. I was hoping that you can just recap on the tax incentive again.
Sure. Sure. So in terms of the tax incentive, that is a federal initiative. It's through Department of Justice and the IRS. There is a package that you have to fill out. And the small business definition, and as I mentioned, 90% of you would qualify, is that you need to be a small business with I believe 30 or less employees and less than $1 million revenue. Don't quote me, but I think it's those parameters, which is similar to that of SBDC. And what happens is that, and I could talk to you offline if you want, but there's a way that it shows where there's a ratio in terms of the tax break and then the tax credit. And there's a process to do that. So it's a little bit more cumbersome or detailed than I can go over this, but I'd be happy to follow up with you more and go over the package if need be.
Yeah, no, that would be great.
Definitely, definitely. Please email me and let me know when I can follow up with you.
Do you want me to drop my email in the chat?
Sure.
Okay. All right.
And if anybody else wants information on the tax, I'd be more than happy to talk to you. Again, whether it relates to brick and mortar or relates to the website.
And I'm also dropping a copy of the PowerPoint presentation in the chat, so you guys can have access to that. Okay, and I'm going. Let's see, is there another question? Oh, Ms. Fitzgerald, you can go ahead.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the information. I think this was very good to share. And I don't know if this is the first of this kind. I think you said there was another one, but this would be good to keep going with these kind. I have a question about the deaf and hard of hearing community. A person who may have visual problems and hearing problems and need access to, I don't know, like things at work for communication, or say they were on something like this. Okay, the question is there a test out there? I know you had showed something where I think it was SSA had an Andy interface system or accessibility testing tool. Is there something that we have here so that people can kind of be tested? Because you have some people who are deaf who doesn't hear anything, and some people who are hearing who can hear little. I mean, hard of hearing who can hear little. And then you have some people who are deaf and blind who can hear a little, see a little, can't hear a little, can't see a little. Everybody's on different levels and need different things. And so how would a person be tested? Because I have some hearing loss, so my needs may not be as somebody else's, but somebody else who has visual problems and hearing problems and would need like large text, would need the screen to be different colors, and maybe some other things. I'm not sure. Are there testing tools out there to see what really works for that person? Because I think some of the people here really don't know what they need or what the availability, they don't know what to ask for, because they've been asked that question when I've been in meetings with them. What do you need? How can we make our websites more accessible? And it's like, I don't know. So is there a testing process for each person to kind of go through so they could see what their need is, so they know what to ask for or look for?
So the only way to really be sure is to have the end user testing groups and to have people who have that disability just see if it works for them, see if they can use it. That is really about the only guaranteed way to do it. That said, yes, there are tools. So for instance, the Andy tool, I believe the acronym is Accessible Name and Description Inspector. So it is largely focused on people that are visually impaired. I don't think it tests for anything that has to do with sound. But like the group chat where I first was introduced to Shami, it has they have standards called the WCAG, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And there are a wide variety. So on the uk.gov site that I sent the link to for their accessibility thing, they have a list of all the tools that are out there that do automated tests, and their pricing and a pretty detailed explanation of what is out there, what it catches, what it doesn't catch, if you really dig down into the nitty gritty of it. But when I'm starting out, that's initially what I always do, is I use an automated tool that I know is going to catch as much as I can. I have an application built into my Mac. I have a couple that, you know, like to work at scale, it's difficult to just do one page at a time. So I actually have a tool that goes out and crawls an entire website and checks every page for, you know, a wide variety of these things. Actually, it's one of the tools listed on that. So one of the tools listed on the uk.gov site, the one that actually catches 50%, which is the highest of any of them, is an open source tool. So I have that running on a server that when I need to do an accessibility audit, I just run that and it can audit every page on a website. I know the WCAG do have guidelines about people who are hearing disabled, but I have a feeling that is going to be something that there's probably not much good software out there to test, because, you know, computers just have a really hard time, just as they have a hard time understanding what images are, they have a hard time understanding context and meaning. So how would they really be able to evaluate, you know, if this makes sense or not? So I think ones for people that are hearing impaired, aside from, you know, does it have closed captions, for something animated, I think are going to be pretty hard to test for. So you would really have to rely on users, I believe.
Okay, because I know for people who are just hearing impaired or deaf or hard of hearing, they just really, the access is really for speech. So for like videos or like how you guys are presenting today, because that's what's happening with even in the schools or on webinars such as this, all I see is the screen. So if you're talking, I don't see what you're saying, or I can't hear what you're saying if
Yeah.
I don't see it. You know what I mean? So they would only need that if there's speech, but
So I was using Google Hangouts the other day, and it's very much like the screen sharing, all that stuff. And I just noticed they had a captions button, and I decided to turn it on. And I was talking with a buddy of mine that basically is a professional hacker. He gets paid to fix people's websites when they hacked into. And so it was a very technical conversation, and I didn't think the speech recognition would be very good at it. I expected that captions to be horrible because they were doing it live by a computer, and I was amazed. They were very, very good. That said, Zoom actually has taken some heat under the ADA because as everything got locked down during this pandemic, it came out that Zoom isn't accessible, and that a lot of people that have disabilities have struggled with Zoom, and probably just for that reason. So I think now that they've gotten in hot water for it, and you know that it's being so widely used, I think they're starting to work on it. But a lot of this stuff just really isn't taken very seriously. You know, people, it's an afterthought, or they don't care, or they build services without any thought for it at all. There's actually a platform for blogging called medium.com that a lot of technical blogs are written on, so I end up referencing it a lot. And I was reading about accessibility issues, and I learned that they didn't even support the feature of alt text until like a year ago, which is about as basic as you can get. So a lot of this is really, it's not baked in. You have to intentionally go look for it and seek it out. And it really is an afterthought that a lot of these services just can't or don't provide.
Point in terms of people that are hearing impaired, I think you can spotlight the speaker so that you can see their lips move, as opposed to highlighting the presentation. And then that way you might be able to get more of the presentation.
Yeah, that's one of the big things I have heard about people that sign, essentially, that try to use these Zoom calls, is that they, you know, they're so small that they can't get any of the signs. And it's been one of the big issues raised with Zoom and this format in particular. So yeah, you're right about that.
And that is something that happened a couple weeks ago in a meeting that we had, and we had an interpreter up on the screen and we spotlighted the interpreter, but then the interpreter switched after 20 minutes or so, and the other interpreter was going, but we couldn't see that interpreter because it was only stuck on the one, and the one was just, resting, and the other one was going, but we had no idea. So we didn't know when to switch it. So I do understand that is something that, so we had to have a person, we had to ask for the interpreters to let us know when you're going to switch so that we could switch the spotlight too, to kind of keep up with that. Otherwise, only the person who's speaking will show up, and that gets confusing. So yeah, it is a lot of things that needs to be worked out. I mean, it is appreciated, all this accessibility, and it is appreciated, but it's not 100% always.
No, it's not. And I will say that when you start looking at, as people are living longer, the number of people that have some disability just keeps getting higher and higher, whether it's a mobility issue, whether it's a visual impairment, whether it's hearing impairment. I mean, it just keeps going and going and going. And especially in, places less affluent, frankly, places that don't have the economic resources we do. I was reading a thing in India about like the percentage of people that end up getting cataracts by age 70, and it's, I don't know, 90% or something very high. And so, yeah, it's good to just, I guess, listen to your customers. If somebody requests and needs help, then do everything you can to help them.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any more questions? Thank you for that question, Ms. Fitzgerald. That's a lot of information we need to work on. And as Adam was saying, as we age, more things will become more mainstream, because it'll be the majority of the people that need the assistance as opposed to a minority of the people. And the universal design will become more of a thing, and that'll help everybody. Okay, Shami, did you have anything else you wanted to share?
Sure. And hi, Tony. How are you? Just want to give a shout out. Hi. Haven't seen you in a while. I do want to mention we're talking about universal design and, what's the number game? The reality is that there are over 60 million people with disabilities, give or take. Out of that, I believe at least 10, maybe a little bit less, maybe 5, do have visual disabilities, and that's millions and millions of people. So, sometimes people think that, like Adam was saying, it's an afterthought, or I didn't really think about this group, but people with disabilities are the largest minority in the country. And when you keep that in mind, then you think of them as a big marketing block. So just so FYI, I just want to make sure that people know that there's a lot of people with disabilities, and a lot of people haven't even disclosed. So we're all out there, we're all together. And Adam mentioned I have slight disabilities too. We all have disabilities. So it's just part of what we do day to day. But again, that's what the ADA is here for, and so forth.
Okay, well, we have any more questions? Okay, well, on behalf of the Virgin Islands Small Business Development Center and the Disability Rights Center of the Virgin Islands, I want to thank you all for attending today's session. And we look forward to seeing you next week. And next week we'll be back with Webinar Tuesday with the SBA. And then on Thursday, we start a basic bookkeeping series. And then on Monday the 8th, we'll be back with the Lunch and Learn with the Disability Rights Center and the EEOC, and we'll talk about International Women's Day and women in business. So with that, we want to thank you all for attending, and we will see you next week. Have a great weekend.